there guys, welcome back to the channel. Happy to see you. Hope you're happy to see me too. In this video, we take on a very important topic, discussing the declining media integrity in the West, which Africa should never and must never emulate. Ladies and gentlemen, in the current world, invention and innovation is growing at a much faster rate. Especially in the area of information technology, a lot is changing. Information is key. Whatever sphere of life you're in, whatever industry you are in, whatever profession, whatever age, information has become a very important part and parcel of our lives. At the turn of the new millennium, the use of the internet grew significantly. And later on, social media has become a very important sphere for accessing and getting information, marketing, entertainment, and doing a lot of stuff that improve our lives. Unfortunately, social media has also become a place where misinformation, disinformation, and fake news is more prominent. And therefore, in the era and age we live in today, the role of mass media has become more important than ever before. As we all seek out for information, there's one significant thing that all of us are looking for: truth, authenticity, and genuineness in the information and news that we receive. Looking back into the ancient world, what did happen is that people spread information. People passed on information by word of mouth, where a person would be sent carrying a scroll, or carrying a letter, or carrying a message of whatever kind, and take it physically to the intended recipients. And as we moved on, we came to a time in the early 19th century when businessmen in cities in Italy and Germany could gather information and share it with their close contacts. And this gave birth to the business of gathering information and selling it. And from that time, the printing of magazines and newspapers started. As we came to World War II, the use of radio became prominent. And at this time, there was an experimentation of televising news, which later on grew to the televisions that we have today. Coming to the beginning of the new millennium, the internet was growing. And with the growth of the internet, information would be dispensed quickly. But as I've mentioned, there is one very important thing that we all still seek: truth. We all want to access information that we believe and trust that is genuine and true and authentic. And that is why, as much as there have been developments, as much as technology has reshaped a lot of industries, the mass media and its role has been more and more profound. Ladies and gentlemen, the occurrences from the beginning of 2020 to 2024 has seen some unprecedented moments where the media has either been of good help to us or has been a total failure and disappointment to men. Remember, at the beginning of 2020, the COVID-19 pandemic hit the entire globe, resulting in a global shutdown. As we came to the beginning of 2021, there was an insurrection, the January 6th, in the United States. They call it a sweet name, insurrection. In other parts of the world, they would call it post-election violence. And as we came to 2022, Russia invaded Ukraine, a war that has been fought for a long time. Coming to 2023, Hamas launched an attack on Israeli civilians, resulting into a war that has also been fought for a very long time. And in 2024, Ukraine, in retaliation, launched an incursion into the Kursk region of Russia, a war that is still going on as I make this video today. And in all these, the power of information, the influence of information, especially through the mass media, has become a topic for many. In some instances, we have seen the boldness, we have seen the courage of journalists who are going out in pursuit of truth. On the other hand, we have also seen journalists, we have seen media stations that have been at the forefront of spreading misinformation, of spreading fake news, of not authenticating the information that they give out to the public, abdicating their mandate, neglecting the very purpose for which they exist. 2024 is a year that is engulfed with some very significant and important events. In particular, all eyes are set on the November 2024 presidential elections in the United States. And this brings me to the topic that I'm discussing today, the decline of the integrity of the Western media. As I have been following closely on the ongoing presidential campaigns, I have been watching a lot of media channels and media outlets, listening to a lot of journalists as they go about their duties in informing the public. But as all eyes can see, there is a clear divide that there are media outlets that outrightly subscribe to right-wing and conservative ideas, and the others, on the other hand, that subscribe to the left-wing and liberal ideas. I have no problem with sticking and standing for an ideology. I have no problem with advocating for a particular position, but I have a problem when institutions and people who are expected to relay the truth, assess the authenticity of information that they give, and maintain their integrity in going about their duties, abdicate the very roles that we all expect of them, just in the name of standing for an ideology. As all eyes can see, media outlets in the Western world that subscribe to conservative ideas have been at the forefront of supporting the Republican Party's candidate, President Donald Trump. And in doing so, they outlay outright bias, where it seems their main aim is to support him by whatever means they can. In most cases, you will realize that they do not dissect the information as they should. They do not critique his policies as they should. They do not allow diverse opinions in their outlets as they supposedly should. On the other hand, left-wing media is also skewed towards the Democratic candidate, Kamala Harris. They present, most of the times, a one-sided story where they will present to you the negative side of the opponent and only the positive side of their candidate. The same applies to the right-wing media. They will only present the positive side of a candidate they support, and they will only present negative side of a candidate they don't support, of the candidate they oppose. And while it is okay that people should have a stand, a person who has declared themselves a journalist, a person who is dispensing information as a journalist, and an institution that is operating as a media outlet ought to abide by the ethics that guide their industry, ought to abide by the rules and ethics that guide their profession. And that is what I have a problem with. Just to quickly refresh your mind on what are journalism ethics, just to refresh our minds, we must first ask ourselves, what are journalism ethics? These are the set of practices that journalists and media houses need to follow while reporting or covering news events. So these practices guide journalists to uphold integrity, accuracy, fairness, unbiasedness, and accountability in going about their work. And so this brings us to the 5 principles of journalism ethics that journalists and media houses ought to abide by, which is significantly declining in the Western world. The first is truth and accuracy. Journalism is all about true reporting and being accurate with facts. Therefore, it goes without saying that a journalist must seek and report the truth. But what have we seen over time? What have we seen from the Western media as they reported on the incidences in Gaza? What have we seen from the Western media as they report on the presidential campaigns in the US today? We see instances where professionals do not seek to pursue the truth. In some instances, you clearly see that they have taken a stand, they have taken a side, and they choose to report biasly in support of the side they have chosen. Principle number 2, independence. Journalists should be independent from any external influence while covering their news. And so it is required that journalists should not be influenced by propaganda makers and by political agendas. Unfortunately, the Western media is failing in this because clearly there is a divide. We've come to a point where a majority of media outlets are standing for a particular position. Whether it is correct or not, whether it is true or not, they propagate it and propel it and inform the public so. And in so doing, we miss the point because we all tend to trust the mass media. We all tend to look up to the mass media to bring the truth to us. We all look up to the mass media because they have the requisite resources, expertise, and capability to pursue truth and authenticate any kind of information. Unfortunately, this is increasingly declining in the Western world, where media outlets and journalists are busy supporting their ideologies rather than maintaining their journalism ethics. The third is fairness and impartiality. It is required that journalists should do their best to present both perspectives and treat all subjects with fairness and impartiality. And in so doing, they should not get into favoritism. But today, if you watch the ongoing campaigns in the US, you will realize that the right-wing media are fully focused on supporting Donald Trump, favors Donald Trump, and is used as a tool for attacking Kamala Harris. And so is the left-wing media, which favors Kamala Harris and is used as a tool to attack Donald Trump. In so doing, we get into one problem where the truth tends not to be absolute as it ought to be. In essence, it becomes truth according to who. So the conservatives have their own truth according to them. The liberals have their own truth according to them. And that is a problem to society. And that is why in such societies as it is in the US today, there is clearly division and disunity that manifests in very many ways, including violence against particular groups. The fourth is minimization of harm. It is the responsibility of journalists and media houses to ensure that they minimize harm that comes to individuals when addressing sensitive issues such as personal matters and issues that require discretion. But what have we seen? In the wake of the Israel-Hamas war, we saw incidences of misinformation reported by mainstream media. One significant one was when a bomb hit a hospital in Gaza, and BBC in particular was quick to report and blame Israel for the bombing. However, this was done in a rush without clearly authenticating the information, and later on it turned out that this was not the case. The BBC is just one example. There are several many others. Unfortunately, when these media outlets and journalists have realized that they have misreported or let out an incorrect or unverified information, the kind of apology that they issue is not very much convincing, because they are doing so while clearly it appears and it seems that they have taken a side in these kinds of situations. And therefore, it is sometimes difficult to distinguish whether they do so intentionally or it is just an occupational hazard. In addition, the kind of information that is spread through the media has consequences on the personal lives of individuals that are being reported upon. For instance, in the US, we have seen politicians come under attack, physical aggression, assault, because of information that is let out through the media, which is actually something that the media ought not to support, ought not to be involved in. But people have lost their way. Professionals who are meant to do the right thing are simply blinded by the ideologies they follow. The fifth principle is accountability. Media organizations and journalists are accountable to the public. And just like any other profession, there are risks involved in the media. And sometimes, journalists and media outlets may fail to get the correct information, and sometimes may fail to gather the correct information, and sometimes make error in their reporting. When they realize so, it is paramount that they issue an apology and acknowledge the errors. But rarely do they do this. We have seen this especially with the US media, where different outlets, in some instances, misreport on issues and let out information that is not correct. But rarely do they come out to acknowledge that they've made an error, because they are standing for something, and this thing they are standing for is actually blinding them and taking them away from the core of what they ought to do as journalists. Clearly, they are losing their way. And when I reflect closer home, journalists and media outlets in Africa, to my opinion, have done a tremendous job. They have grown to a significant extent. They face challenges of various kinds. The media freedom in Africa is still not at the level it is in the Western world. And journalists go through a lot in pursuit of truth and authenticity. But to my observation, they do it with greater passion. The media in Africa today, I think, is leading the way. In following the ethical principles of journalism. For instance, in Kenya and Nigeria, in the recent past, we have seen protests against the existing regimes, and the media was at the forefront of covering all this, bringing truth to the people. And in so doing, I feel that they helped prevent the massacre of many. As we go about our politics, the media plays a key role in influencing opinions, and it is necessary that the citizens ought to get the diverse perspectives, that each side of the story is told, the good and the bad, the pleasing and the ugly. And therefore, as I conclude, it is my take that the African media should never, ever try to emulate what is happening in the Western world. We have so much building to do in Africa. We do not need another thing that will come to sow division. The level of tribalism we experience in Africa, the level of class wars we experience in Africa, we cannot afford to add the media to the equation to sow further division. And therefore, the African media and journalists in Africa have to stand in their place, hold their integrity, be accountable, and hold dearly the ethical principles that guide their profession. And in so doing, they will do a great job in taking Africa to the next level. Thank you for watching. If you find value in this video, give it a thumbs up and share so that we can continue bringing you more content like this. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below about the level of integrity of media outlets and journalists in Africa. See you in the next video.